Hi, I'm Jim Mulhausen, the founder of Sales QB, and welcome to the webinar, The Unsolvable Problem for All Small Sales Forces. A couple of housekeeping items before we get going. There's a lot of people on the webinar, so we're going to mute everybody. If you have questions, go ahead and text those in rather than try to unmute yourself. It's just going to be easier that way. And then I am going to save questions for the end of the presentation rather than interrupt it and hopefully not disturb the flow. Let's go ahead and get going. If you have a small sales force, which is we define as 2 to 15 salespeople, you have one of three problems. You have what we call the Sophie's choice of sales management, right? You can't divide the baby in half. It's tough. But when you have a small sales force, you have to sacrifice one of three variables that you would like. Number one, the cost of sales manager is probably going to be too high if you take care of the second one. Meaning if you get a talented sales manager, the cost is too high because you don't have enough salespeople to spread it over. If you get a cheap sales manager, then you sacrifice talent or the amount of time that you get from that person. One of those variables is always out of whack because you don't have an economy of scale in your sales department. And there are 5 ways that this tends to spin out. So we put it into a chart. The first way that we see businesses handling this diseconomy of scale in their sales department is letting the inmates run the asylum. Now let me back up a little bit and tell you what I mean by a diseconomy of scale. Let's say that you ran a paper towel company and you have this big factory. You have this great big paper mill that makes paper towels. The problem is you only sell enough paper towels that you need to run your factory 3 8-hour shifts a week. Not 3 shifts a day, 3 shifts a week. That's a diseconomy of scale. Your cost per paper towel is going to be higher than Procter & Gamble's, who's running it all those shifts, running nonstop 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's a diseconomy of scale. You probably have the same problem in your sales department. And so some people handle it by having no sales manager. They say things like, well, I'll tell you what, my team's been together a long time and they just self-manage. You've met salespeople before, right? There's one thing that all salespeople despise: accountability. So now we're going to let a group of people that by their wiring runs from accountability and they're going to self-manage? No way. It's going to work in some ways. I'll tell you where it works. It works to keep your payroll costs low. It's very low cost, right? We get a check mark in that box. You don't get much management time per week. I mean, the amount of strategy or innovation or things like that is basically zero. What they're basically doing is kind of like being the kid in class that doesn't disrupt the teacher. That's what you're getting with that. You're not getting the benefits of sales management. You just don't have behavioral problems with your sales force. And you certainly aren't getting the third column of the management skill. That's what you're really sacrificing. The second thing that we see is what we call a sales babysitter. A low-skill sales manager that can make sure people are showing up, can do a little bit of accountability, but doesn't have the ability to really add strategic value to your sales force. The analogy I'll use is they can't hit a curveball. And sales management, if you really want great sales management, you have to be able to hit a curveball. I promise you, if you take me and put me in batting practice at a major league park and have a major league pitcher throw me curveballs, you can throw them all day long. I'm not going to hit them because I don't have that skill. And if you get a low-skill sales manager, same problem. They can't hit a curveball, and you lose the value of what hitting a curveball does for your business, which in some cases is billions of dollars. Third option that we almost never see is to overhire. Hire that $250,000 a year sales manager. Yeah, it's expensive, but they bring all this talent, right? The problem is divided by 4 salespeople or 5 salespeople, it's $50,000 a salesperson just to manage them. Most companies, that math doesn't work. It needs to be in the $20,000 range to manage a salesperson, ideally even 10. But 10 to 20,000 is worth it to manage a salesperson. You'll get that value back. 50, it's probably not worth it. That's why they go to the other options. The other one we see a lot of is the owner as the sales manager. Payroll cost is effectively zero, right? You're already paid for doing other stuff. The problem is, if you're really honest with yourself, how many hours do you devote to true sales management? Not looking at a pipeline report and calling old Bob in and going, hey, I really need you to close a couple of deals, you're behind. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about auditing your sales process. I'm talking about innovation. I'm talking about implementing marketing tools from a technological standpoint that take time and energy. There's no consistent effort being put into the strategic sales management in the companies that we see. Then the last one, the coup de grace, promoting your salesperson to working sales manager. Horrible idea, by the way. Short version, don't do it. Because here's what happens. Sure, it seems to save money. It does not. It will cost you a fortune. You're not getting a whole lot of hours, and sometimes they don't have the skill. And in our experience, usually they do not have the skill. But here's why this is the coup de grace, is you are trading a good sales performer for a bad sales manager. And if you think that they can do both, you're probably wrong. I've almost never seen it work. What I have seen is someone say, the boss promoted me and he left my quota the same and he expects me to manage all these people too. I can't take much more of this. Here's how it plays out. They're going to fail as a sales manager most likely, and you're going to have to demote them back to a salesperson. And that's going to kill their morale at best, and half the time that person's going to quit. So what you're going to get is losing your best salesperson. Not a great idea. Please don't do that. We'll call that a best practice. And that's why we came up with this fractional sales management concept. This is not something we dreamed up. It's something where we saw these problems with our clients and we said they need a solution that works. And so fractional sales management is also an imperfect solution because what we have done is adjust the variable that no one was playing with. Those 5 solutions tend to work on how much does it cost and how many hours per week I get. And I think that what you see is either it's 0 or 40 for the hours, right? We'll just not bother with it and ignore sales management, or I'll get a cheap one. They're all working under the assumption that you have to have someone in there 40 hours a week in order for it to work. And that is not true. What you need is consistent effort driving your sales force to better performance, higher accountability, innovation, strategy, and getting those strategies implemented by someone that has ownership caliber skill and the time to do it. And that's what fractional sales management is designed to do. We call it a new paradigm for sales management, right? It's just a different way of thinking about it. Some of the other benefits would include bringing someone in. I've never met an owner that couldn't manage the sales. That they have the talent to do it. What they don't have is the time, that they've got higher and better uses of their time. So when you bring in someone that is that $250,000 caliber sales manager, it makes a world of difference because they can hit that curveball. They also bring best practices. You know, I always joke that I'm just a bumblebee. I go from flower to flower, grabbing pollen and spreading it around. And you can and you learn how to contort things when you're doing this for a living. Meaning, I see someone in roofing or software that has a best practice that you wouldn't think would work for a dairy farm, but it will, because you learn to break out the piece that is specific and figure out what's really going on, what's the theme, and then taking that theme and moving it into the business. Most importantly, and I think people forget this benefit, is that it allows the owner to check sales management off their things to worry about, that it frees up that focus and that attention that you're giving sales management, even if you're not putting a lot of time in. You know, you may be saying, well, Jim, I don't put a lot of time into sales management. Okay, but I'll bet you put mental energy into it. I'll bet you worry about it. I'll bet you get frustrated by your sales team sometime, if you're like most owners that I see. But now you don't need to because somebody else is worrying about it. And most importantly, it's cost effective. That the cost of a fractional sales manager any business can afford. In fact, we've got clients that are a one-person sales force of the owner that hire us just to be their sales manager because they know that with some coaching, with some technique, with some best practices, they can perform better. So I want to do an exercise. We're going to call it Dare to Imagine. And I'd like you to actually grab pencil and paper if you're not driving and write this down, because if you commit it to paper, it sticks more. Ask yourself these questions. How much would it impact you if you never needed to worry about the sales function? You had somebody solid in there that could just take care of it and manage it in your stead, and you could focus on other things. What would that mean to you? In a perfect world, how would your sales force perform? Not what would you like them to fix, not what's annoying you. I'm saying clean whiteboard. What kind of sales force would you like? What kind of sales process would you like? And imagine if you had that, not just fixing what's wrong. What would they do differently? What would they do better? And most importantly, what impact would this have on your business, your profitability, your operational team, and you? So I'm going to give you 60 seconds and take more after the webinar if you need it. Welcome back. Hopefully you had some ahas, some light bulbs, some motivation to see that there are opportunities. If you're like most businesses, there are significant opportunities in your sales force just by not neglecting sales management. We'd love to talk to you about the specifics of your business. So go ahead and fill out a form on our website. We'll get someone in your area. All sales QBs are local. They're going to come to your door and work with you, work with your team in person. And we'd love to learn the specifics of your business and see if it's a fit. Thanks everybody for your time, energy, and attention. Let's go sell.